Skadoosh, we're back. We're back, and if you've been following along, we've been cracking on with the Schumacher ICON build this morning. We've got plenty done. A few hurdles and obstacles. Well, not really. So I just popped a reamer through the top arm. That now moves nice and freely. It's always good to have one of these reamers handy when you're building a car. You want to make sure everything moves as freely as possible. So I've changed. I was only going to run up to step 19 or 20, but let's go all the way. Let's get this job done. Certainly the car built anyway up to step 23 of bolting the wheels on, and then what I'll do is I'll do a separate electrical install, wire it all up, get the motor right, and walk you through that, and then I'll talk you through how to set up the front steering as well, and I'll try and get a setup of a speedo as well with a 21.5. And what I might even do is, as it's a newbie, I might stick it on the motolizer, and just check out what this is like straight out the pack. Because it's a 2S, it doesn't really matter too much, but we'll see how we go with that. So onwards and upwards. So step 14. Previously I've been getting these ready for us. So there's step 14. And turnbuckle time. Now if there's one part that I don't enjoy on a car is building turnbuckles, but hey, c'est la vie. Steve Donald in the house. Welcome along, Stephen. How are you, my friend? Stephen, just a world famous 12 scale driver, featured heavily on the podcasts in topic of conversation. When talking about the F grading and all that kind of malarkey. So turnbuckles being made. Got two different lengths. As you can see, this is the shorter one. Obviously that's the one that's going to be running here, and then these are going to be the ones going out to the wheels. So there's a few caveats here. Right hand thread, left hand thread, so it's just showing you how to distinguish between the two. So there is a very small ledge here that's distinguishing the left hand thread, and then it actually goes through telling you which way to rotate it to make it shorter or longer. That's a really nice thing. I've never seen that on any manual that I've built. So Steve says, do I plan to run this or just build for fun? I am running this. I am getting myself involved in a bit of F1 racing, Steve, and I think you should do the same. Let's make F1 where it's at, along with all of the other classes. So yeah, so I'm going to run this, Steve. I'm going to enter the nationals, and the reason being is I've raced a bit in the US, and when I last went out to the US, I took out my two 12 scale cars, and one was mod, one was stock. And to be quite honest, I couldn't do both. I am not good enough. So I am going to take this out to the US because I know F1 is big out there when we finally can get back to running in the US. And I'm going to run this at the NYGP and hopefully snowbirds and all that kind of stuff. I need to black grease those threads. Why do I need to black grease those threads? I've never done that before. So screwing the sockets onto the turnbuckle until no threads are visible and then undoing them desired lengths allows for easier adjustment. Greasing the threads will also help. That's what it says in the manual, but I've never done that. But I don't want to make it easier to adjust. I like to feel that these are quite hard to rotate personally. I've got strong fingers, Stephen, from my day job, so unless you're a northern softie like you. So as you can see, I'm not struggling to do these up with my fingers, so don't see why I wouldn't want to put black grease on them. So do that up and then do the other end. Going. And then what I do is make sure that this gap here and this gap here is very similar. Might even measure it in a minute, just to be really anal, and then I'll adjust from there. But until then, I just get the ball cups on there. Steve Donald's also got a YouTube channel, all based around the Schumacher E3. If you want to have more insights there, of course, I've done some videos on the E3 as well, but so has he. You might not understand him though, because he's got a bit of an accent. Cheap shots, but they're the best ones. They are the best ones. Why would you not take a cheap shot? So that's that. Perfect. So lovely. So the steering link gap needs to be 17 millimeters. So I'm going to set that at 17. So she needs to come in significantly. Slightly done it too much. Bit more needed. Great, so that's the right length. And then these need to be 21. I know you're here to criticize, Steve. That's what you do best, like so many in the RC world. post up a picture of your car and watch it get ripped to shreds. Love you too, Stephen. Set yourself up to be shot at. Got to be able to cope with it. I can. So, 21. Oh, look at that. Oh, no. Fraction more. Perfect. That's done. Yeah, I know. Put a photo up at your peril. Good idea not putting it up. Yeah, there's some BRCA rules. Yeah, absolutely. Maybe I'll put them up in the link bottom of this, but you can see it on the BRCA website. There's a stock tyre as well, and also no tyre warmers as well, which was great. Freaking tyre warmers, man. So they are done. Pop those on. Okay. So I've managed to bolt that down. Oops, don't want to do that one. Managed to bolt that down with the post there trapped in the wrong spot. So I just need to lift that up, get it to free up. There we go. Which means I've then got to readjust my caster because I've just altered it, but that's all right. I'll go back and do that later. So Steve says, so it's 21.5, correct? 2S, correct? Stock tyre, how long are the runs? 6 minutes. Oh, good question. Don't know how long the runs are. Maybe someone could say, whoever's watching. Don't know if Andy's still there or Andy Thompson's still there or another F1 guru. My hunch is it will be 5 minutes, Steve. Yeah, I'm pretty sure it's 5 minutes. Pretty sure. Oh, there we go. Steering done. Obviously, refine all of that when we get nearer to the end. Brilliant. Turnbuckle's done. Okay. Step 15 is diff time. Is diff time. It's been a while since I've built a diff, to be fair. 12 scours left diffs, and is now all about the spool. At this point, do not empty that bag out on the worktop. Empty it onto tissue paper. Kitchen towel, because the balls will go everywhere. So it comes with a steel axle. The bearings, got some shims there. And I only see one diff plate, because step 16 is the other side. Cool. So this is where we need a bit of silicone grease. Pop a little bit of the silicone grease on here. What that does, enables the diff ring to hold in place. Now, there's varying schools of thought. You can sand that ring, polish it. I'm going to do neither. I'm just going to whack it on as it comes, because I've built nice diffs doing that and not doing that. I'm then going to get some oil and dab it on the ball bearing. Then we need a couple of shims. And then I'm just going to pop some silicone on the plate. And really, you don't want too much on there. Slam it in, Steve. Exactly. So, put a bit more oil on that bearing. And then what I'm going to do is fill up these holes here with a bit of grease. A lot of people will have syringes, and they'll syringe oil into, or the silicone grease into these holes. It's all a bit pro, that. Push that in, or slam it in, as Steve says. And put some on the end. Enables you to pick up a bearing. Link's not showed up. Steve, are you saying that my diff building is not up to scratch? Is that what you're trying to intimate? Steve regularly doesn't do his wheel nuts up, and many a time has he had a wheel fall off during a race. I jest. That's that. Bearing on. Job's good. Production. It's all about the production, Steve. It's all about the production. So that's built. Then I'm going to get the other side out. Just going to do the same this end. There is the bearing. Try and hook that out if I can. Pop some oil in the bearing. Dab a bit of grease on here, just so the diff ring holds in place. And then bearing pushes in. No, it doesn't. Bearing comes out because there's already a bearing on the end here. pushes in, then the bearing goes on top. Then we need the big washer, pushes down. Then we've got large groove washer, small groove washer. There's the large groove. At this point, we want to get a little bit of grease in there. Some people say to run grease, some people say not to run grease. Every answer, or every person you ask gives a different answer, but on this one, I'm going to put a little bit in there. Not too much. And the washer goes on, and then you've got these sprung washers that are slightly concave or convex, whichever way you want to look at it, whether you're talking about the top or bottom. And there's 5 of them, and so it goes convex first, and then concave. And there you have it. Steve Donald asks a question. Stu, on a 12th matter, spools have made the cars quicker, but in my honest opinion, the racing worse. What's your view? Good question. Has it made the racing worse for it? Well, I think at the top level, I think it's made it better. I think it's made it faster, closer, and I think that people that can drive, I think it's been better for them. I think for the people slightly lower down the order, I think it's actually, yeah, it's been harder for them. Harder on the front tyres. Excuse me, I'm just having a bit of my coffee. Harder on the front tyres. It's also made people have to drive faster, so push harder, and obviously more mistakes are being made. So I think you're right in that it's there has been negative effects, but personally, I prefer the spool. Do you not like the spool? I know that we've had this conversation. You found it difficult to adapt to because you were sort of running 3 or 4 rounds before, before you put in the spool in. I've turned up at Tamworth now. I don't even bother running a diff at the start, straight in with a spool, and it seems to just go perfectly well for me. Slightly hard to drive at the start, but it goes fine. What do you think, Steve? So that's the diff built, and at this point, you know, it's not done up very tight. Nice and smooth. She's good to go. There's a few caveats in here. It says note correct disc spring assembly. So that's pointing to these discs here. Note the correct thrust washer assembly. Make sure you've got that right. Diff setting, very gradually tightening the nut until the diff action begins. Then tighten the nut 360 more. This setting should be good for most conditions. I think if you've run a car and for a decent amount of time and you know what you're feeling for with a diff, you'll be able to adjust it from there. That would be gradually tightening the nut until the diff action begins, and then going another 360. Yeah, it's a good start point. If you then go off the line and you hear the diff slipping, then you're going to have to go tighter. Yeah, if you've got the car and you're at the track and there's people around you, they will 100% help you with that. So definitely lean on others when it comes to diff setup. So we move on to step 17, back into the box. Step 17, ride height shims. Open this up here. So we've got the ride height shims, got the hub carrier, we've got a couple of shims and a couple of bearings. So Steve has come back with, it's more than I feel that you have to run it to be quick, but the cars are not as nice to drive. I agree with AB final drivers are fine, but we have C, D, E, F, G, H finals to look after. Not much we can do now. No, absolutely, yeah, lower down. But you could arguably say, is it actually, if the speed limit on the motorway was 100 miles an hour at the start, people wouldn't just go onto the motorway and just drive at 100 miles an hour first time they put their foot on the throttle. They would drive at 50 miles an hour, and then 3 years later they drive at 80 miles an hour. 3 years later they might get up to 100 miles an hour. If someone has started with a spool, they're just going to learn to drive with it. So I think I understand what you're trying to get at there, but I don't necessarily believe that people in the lower finals, after a season of running a spool, will be any worse for it. I don't think. But let's see as time goes on. So ride height spacers, because this setup is with the BRCA wheels, hopefully it will tell us which ride height spacers we used. So 00s are being used. So there's a 00. There's a 00. These must be kept, although I'm not sure the relevance of them, seeing as you're not going to be using different size tyres that often. So 00 obviously it doesn't need to go any particular way up. They push in nice and snug, nice clean fit. Again, I'm just going to oil those bearings just because I've always done that. It's certainly something that I like to do. Then we've got a shim here. And a shim here. It's already got the nut on, bolt on rather. goes on that way around. Again, as I've said before, you want to get yourself a 1mm or 0.1 shim and slide it in between that hub carrier and the shim to make sure that you've got enough gap for it to spin freely and still have a little bit of play. So that was step 17. So just pop in the rear diff on. Now step 18, back into the box. Step 18, what have we got here? Ooh, these are new, I've seen these before. So these attach onto the hub carriers with the bolts, simple stuff. There we go, that's that. So Steve's come back with a reply on the spools. No problem talking about it, Steve, always happy. Last comment on spools, the fast drivers would still be the fastest if they had a diff, spool gear diff, but the wannabe fast drivers will follow. Yeah, but isn't that the same in all sports, that people want to use the same as the fastest guys? At the end of the day, we are all competitors, and you want to pit yourself against the best, but you wouldn't want to use inferior equipment. So if the fastest guys were using diffs and they knew they could go faster, they would obviously want to use something that's going to make them faster, because they're always trying to push the limits at any level of sport. For that reason, the slower guys are going to follow. Stopping faster guys using spools is stopping progression, isn't it? Because if the cars are fundamentally quicker with a spool, it's then up to the engineering of the car to make them easier to drive. And I think that's what we're getting, aren't we? We're getting cars that go faster. Accidents are then bigger. They've then had to make the cars stronger, more robust, to accommodate the bigger crashes. So Stevie on then says, which makes the D final carnage your 100-mile-an-hour analogy. I think the 18-year-old in a Fiesta is still doing 100 miles and just kills himself. I don't think so. I think there are more kids killing themselves doing 30 or 40 or 50 mile an hour in 30-mile-an-hour limits than there are kids dying on the motorway. I bet there are more people dying in 50-mile-an-hour zones than there are at 70-mile-an-hour zones or 100-mile-an-hour zones, without doubt. So that's step 18. On to step 19. Now we are building the dampers. And a good caveat and a good sort of carryover with that, Steve, is that take F1 for instance, where you've got more power than grip. There will be people having bigger crashes, or should I say the car will be out of control at a lower speed because there's too much power, not enough grip. So in this instance, where the speed is lower, but the grip is worse because of it, you're still going to have lots of crashes, which makes everyone drive slower. That just makes the class a different dynamic to LMP, where it's all getting faster and it's therefore asking you to be more skillful. So Steve says, no, my point is people won't build up to a spool before the talent, not the stats on motorway car crashes. Spool before their talent is there to use it. No, well, again, their talent is based on what's gone before. If they went straight out with a spool on and the car pirouetted all over the place, they would just slow down. Or, yeah, they'd just slow down. If you took diff away altogether, they'd just slow down. I don't think they would. I don't think they would be any worse for it. They just learn to drive with a spool. So we'll move on from the spool debate because this is a build on F1. But interesting comments, Steve. So I'm a little bit confused on this here. So the manual. So this is the second time the manual has referenced 30k. It referenced it on the front, and it referenced it on the front kingpins, and it references it now on the side dampers. But they've put 40 oil in the kit, but the 40 oil is not being used. As far as I can see. So they've recommended 30k, but they've included 40k. And if we look at the back here, and we look at the CST for the oil for the dampers, again they've recommended 30k, but they've supplied 40k. So there's a bit of a conflict there. The only real bad point so far. So let's put some, build these dampers. So these are the different damper units. They're all the same length. They're all the same. That's different. They are the same. Shim. Right. So that's going to screw into there. Now what I always tend to do is screw the grub screw into that first, then I screw it into that second. Now that doesn't fit flush. There's a bit of a gap in there. Now I assume that's going to be the same the other side. Yep, that's the same. That goes in there. Am I doing this right here? Make two dampers the same. Yeah, it's going to go in there. That is going to go no, I haven't done that right. Didn't think I'd done that right. So then we've got shim's going to go on there, and then that screws on there. Screws on there. Much bigger damper units than we're used to seeing. So the side dampers have got 12 in. So I squeezed it in the top and then let it all bleed out the holes. Very good. Do the same here. Just going to squeeze it into the top hole. bleed out all of them. And they feel exactly the same. Fantastic. That's that. Now I've got a spare one of these. I assume that will come in later. Let's make sure, get rid of everything. So make sure I get rid of all the oil, all dripping all over the car. That's it. And then, oops, and then the long damper goes that way round. And then these dampers go that way round. Ugh. Might be a bit too much for my fingers. That's those on. So that was step 19A and B. And now we move on to fit in the front wing, step 20. This is the wing complex. And then there is a bag 20, I guess. Yep. Now it's suggesting that I fit the 3 winged section. So that's going to fit on that part of the car. and then Phillips screwdriver. Oh, crikey. Be careful not to over tighten these. So the last thing you want to do is having these drop off as they go around. I would have thought. I'm not sure that would be working for you. Lovely. Front wing. Bag 20. Couple of hefty bolts and nuts. So it's going to bolt on there. Okay. Can't actually get a wrench in that gap, so you have to go pliers. Front wing on. Looking like an F1 car. Gosh, it's long. So that's the step 20. Now we've got 21A. So So 2 of them have pins, 1 of them doesn't. Pin slots in. I can already hear my phone going, get those body posts cut down, cut them down. So that then fits up the front. Oops. Sorry, I'm slightly out of camera shot here. I'm just bolting the front body post on. That's the body posts on. So it actually tells you the dot position. So snap the body pin washers into the pin. Body post may be trimmed for looks and aerodynamics. A sharp knife or side cutters may be used. Aramax body post trimmer AM 190041. Select the correct body washers to fine tune the body shell weight. These are all slightly different. Got 1 dot, 2 dot, 3 dot. Select the correct pin height for the body shell. Mark and drill your body to diameter 6 millimeters for the body posts. That's all fairly simple stuff. And then step B looks like it's just putting the king pit of the body pins in. Step 22, we want to put the rear wing on. Here's step 22. Just move those out the way just for now. We got one more piece of carbon left. And this is to attach the rear wing on. So we've got different heights of wings here. Again, we're going to do the same thing and not quite tighten them up so that it will sit flush to the point that it's going to attach onto. Perfect. Push it onto the worktop. that. And then one of the optional extras was the TRG 5027 wing. So that goes on like that, and then that is going to bolt on back there. That pushes through there. Again, don't want to over tighten this because it's only plastic that you're screwing into. Obviously a thread lock bolt, so nut rather. So it's not going to come off in a hurry. And then that attaches itself to the rear of the car. They're going to need some Loctite, that's for sure. And boom, wing mounted. Huh. So that's step 22. Step 22B, not quite sure what that's telling me to do. Oh, no, just showing me the picture of the and then bag 23 are bearings, shims and wheel nuts. Oh, wheels are out. They stink. So rear wheels don't have any bearings. And nor do they have any shims. They just push fit on. That push fits on. Gonna have to get some black wheel nuts. Can't be doing with silver wheel nuts. I've gone for the Montec F18 body shell, as recommended by Andy Murray. some bearing oil on those bearings. Those in. A snug fit. And then we've got a couple of shims here. Go on the axles, both sides. There's the let me just double check something. As if I couldn't resist in doing that. Guys, I hope you've enjoyed the build as much as I have. Loads of great great comments that come in as we've been chatting through and all that kind of stuff. I think it's clearly a captivating class. It's certainly something that I'm looking forward to trying. Obviously, the car's not done. Things that I need to do are the parts that need adjusting. Obviously, I need to put some lube in the middle. I need to fit the damper on the front as well, so I'm going to go through that with you. Cutting the body shell, fitting the motor, fitting the speedo as well. But I'm going to walk you through all of that. If you've got any questions, feel free to fire them in the comments below. If you've liked the video, like and subscribe, share with your friends. And I think, like you, it's a race weekend. We're going to have the Grand Prix on in Bahrain, and it'll be great to see what goes on over there. See if Lewis Hamilton can nick another one. But for now, it's been a great build. I want to say a big thank you to Andy Murray for the help that he's offered up with the with the build, and I'm really looking forward to running it. See you all next time, and if you get one of these Schumacher F1 Icon cars, enjoy it.